My business partner fired me after 20 years. He never saw my ultimate comeback plan. The sterile gleam of the polished conference table reflected the fluorescent lights, casting a harsh glow on Rex Thorne's triumphant face. His eyes, usually sharp with calculation, now brimmed with an almost childlike glee, a predatory satisfaction that coiled in the air like a viper. Opposite him sat Silas Vance, 48, co-founder of what was, until mere minutes ago, their empire, Nexus Innovations. 20 years. 2 decades of blood, sweat, and sleepless nights poured into building a technology powerhouse from a garage startup. And now, in this very room, it was all being systematically dismantled, at least as far as Rex was concerned. A strange, almost surreal calm had settled over Silas, a quiet awareness of the cosmic irony unfolding before him. Silas, Rex's voice, usually a smooth, persuasive baritone, was now edged with a condescending sweetness that grated on Silas's nerves, a sugar-coated poison. He appreciated Silas coming in on such short notice. Though, he supposed, the notice couldn't be shorter, given the circumstances. Rex leaned forward, resting his forearms on the gleaming surface, a gesture of faux camaraderie that only amplified the betrayal. Every molecule in Silas's body recoiled from the insincerity. Effective immediately, your services are no longer required at Nexus Innovations. Your position, as Chief Innovation Officer and co-founder, has been dissolved. The words hung in the silence, heavy and final. Dissolved. It echoed in Silas's mind, a mocking sound. As if 20 years of his life, his intellectual property, his very identity, could simply be wished away like a morning mist. Across the table, a grim-faced HR representative, Ms. Albright, shifted uncomfortably, a thick severance package folder conspicuously placed beside her. She avoided Silas's gaze, a clear sign of the corporate theater playing out. This wasn't a negotiation, it was an execution. Silas noted the tremor in her hands, a subtle sign of her own discomfort, perhaps even a flicker of empathy. He felt no anger towards her, she was merely a cog in Rex's machinery. Rex continued, his voice growing louder, more assured, filling the void. We've decided to move in a different strategic direction, Silas. A leaner, more aggressive approach. And frankly, your traditional methods, your insistence on ethical nuances over raw market dominance, they no longer align with our vision for Nexus's future. It's a new era, my friend. An era of bold, decisive leadership. My leadership. He punctuated the last words with a slight, almost imperceptible tilt of his chin, a silent declaration of absolute dominion. Silas observed this posturing, a familiar performance from a man who always needed to be the biggest presence in any room. The words about ethical nuances struck Silas as particularly galling. For Rex, ethics were merely an inconvenient obstacle to be circumvented, never a guiding principle. The temptation to lash out, to unleash 2 decades of suppressed frustration and a lifetime of principled indignation, was immense. His mind raced, recalling the countless nights he'd spent hunched over circuit boards, debugging complex algorithms, sketching out groundbreaking concepts that Rex, with his silver tongue, had then taken to venture capitalists, painting them as his own brainchild. His innovations, Rex's charisma. A potent, yet ultimately toxic, partnership. His fingers twitched, an echo of the countless times they'd yearned to punch through a wall when Rex had effortlessly taken credit for a breakthrough Silas had toiled over for months. He remembered the quiet anguish each time Rex presented one of Silas's meticulously crafted prototypes, claiming it as the fruit of his tireless vision. But Silas did not move. He did not speak. His gaze remained steady, meeting Rex's triumphant stare with an unnerving calm. The silence stretched, becoming thick with Rex's unvoiced expectation of Silas's despair, his outrage. Rex wanted a reaction, a confirmation of his power, a testament to Silas's defeat. He expected to see the foundation of Silas's life crumbling before him, leaving him a broken man. What Rex saw instead, Silas imagined, was a man utterly unperturbed. A man whose stillness was not born of shock, but of an intricate, profound certainty. He saw a faint, almost imperceptible glint in Silas's eyes, not of pain, but of a knowledge Rex did not possess. A knowledge that simmered beneath the surface, a well-guarded secret that rendered Rex's pronouncements utterly meaningless. He saw a man who knew precisely how hollow Rex's victory was, how transient his perceived power. Silas felt a deep, almost chilling satisfaction in Rex's mounting unease. Rex paused, his brow furrowing slightly. Silas's lack of reaction was clearly unsettling him, chipping away at his self-assured facade. "You understand the terms, Silas," he pressed, a flicker of uncertainty in his tone. "The severance, the non-disclosure agreements, the forfeiture of all intellectual property developed during your tenure?" He waved vaguely at the folder. "It's all quite standard. And quite binding." The implied threat hung in the air, a final attempt to assert dominance. Silas simply nodded, a slow, deliberate movement. A slight, almost imperceptible smile played on his lips, not of mirth, but of quiet, strategic anticipation. Rex had no idea. He had absolutely no idea that the very ground he believed himself to be standing on, the foundation of his so-called empire, was about to shift beneath his feet, leaving him suspended over an abyss of his own making. The intellectual property he so confidently claimed was, in fact, not his to claim. And Silas's comeback plan? It was already in motion, a meticulously crafted mechanism set into motion years ago, waiting for this precise, inevitable moment. A silent promise echoed in Silas's mind: this was not the end, it was merely the beginning of the true unveiling. To understand that moment, that almost serene calm in the face of absolute betrayal, one must understand the 2 decades that led up to it. Silas's journey with Rex began not with grand corporate offices, but in a cramped, oil-stained garage, a testament to humble beginnings. The scent of soldering fumes and stale coffee filled the air, mingling with the heady aroma of innovation. Silas was the architect of ideas, the silent force behind the innovations that fueled their nascent company, Nexus Technologies as it was then known. He recalled the early days with a strange mix of nostalgia and regret, the shared dreams, the boundless optimism, the belief that they were truly building something special, together. Rex, on the other hand, was the visionary storyteller, the charismatic frontman who could sell ice to an Eskimo, or, more accurately, convince skeptical venture capitalists that a garage full of geeks held the keys to the future. They were, in many ways, the perfect, albeit precarious, partnership. Silas built the engine, Rex drove the car, often at breakneck speed, occasionally veering too close to the edge. From the very beginning, their roles were distinct. Silas was the creator, the engineer, the one who saw problems not as obstacles, but as invitations for elegant solutions. His mind thrived on the intricate dance of circuits, the precise logic of code, the quiet elegance of design. He found immense satisfaction in the meticulous process of turning abstract concepts into tangible, revolutionary products that could genuinely improve lives. He remembered the thrill of a successful debug, the quiet hum of a perfectly designed server, the almost spiritual connection to the technology itself. Rex, however, saw products only as vehicles for profit, as tools for expansion and personal aggrandizement. He was a master of the pitch, a virtuoso of the boardroom, but his understanding of the underlying technology was superficial at best. He relied on Silas's genius, and for a long time, Silas was content to let him take the spotlight, believing that their shared success was paramount, that the impact of their creations would speak for itself. He had been naive. Silas's sacrifices were countless, yet largely invisible. While Rex schmoozed investors at lavish dinners, his laughter echoing through opulent halls, Silas was locked away in the lab, fueled by lukewarm coffee and an unwavering dedication, perfecting the prototypes that would become their first major breakthroughs. He sacrificed sleep, personal relationships, even his health at times, all for the dream of Nexus. He truly believed in the products, in their potential to genuinely improve lives. Rex, he would slowly come to realize, believed only in the bottom line, in the next quarterly report, in the burgeoning numbers in his personal bank account. The subtle shift in Rex's priorities, from shared ambition to personal gain, had been insidious. The cracks in their partnership began to show subtly, almost imperceptibly at first. It started with small slights, Rex referring to my vision in interviews, omitting Silas's name when discussing product breakthroughs, or introducing him as my brilliant engineer rather than my co-founder. These were minor irritations, easily dismissed as ego-driven quirks that came with Rex's flamboyant personality. But over the years, these slights became more pronounced, more deliberate. Rex began to actively diminish Silas's role, restructuring teams to report directly to him, even on core R&D projects that Silas had initiated and painstakingly nurtured. His charisma, once charming and persuasive, now felt like a suffocating blanket, designed to overshadow anyone else's contribution, to make himself the sole sun in the Nexus universe. Silas felt his influence slowly eroding, like sand through his fingers. The turning point, the moment the seed of his ultimate comeback plan was truly planted, occurred about 10 years into their partnership. They had just secured a landmark patent for a revolutionary AI algorithm Silas had developed, one that formed the very backbone of their most successful product line, a neural network capable of processing vast amounts of data with unprecedented speed and accuracy. During the press conference announcing the patent, Rex, holding up a framed copy of the patent certificate, declared to the world, his voice swelling with theatrical pride, "This breakthrough, ladies and gentlemen, is the culmination of my relentless pursuit of innovation, my vision for the future of technology." Silas's name was not mentioned. Not once. He stood in the back of the room, a silent witness to his own erasure. It was a stark, brutal realization. For years, Silas had quietly accepted Rex's appropriation of credit, believing that true value lay in the creation itself, not in the recognition. He had clung to the naive hope that eventually, his contributions would be undeniably evident to everyone, that the quality of the work would speak for itself. But in that moment, seeing the blatant disregard for his work, for his very existence within the company he helped build, a cold, hard truth settled deep within him: Rex Thorne would always put himself first. He would, given the chance, erase Silas from the narrative entirely, leaving him a phantom. That night, Silas couldn't sleep. The betrayal festered, a bitter taste in his mouth. But rather than succumbing to anger, a different emotion took root, a calm, calculated resolve. He realized that if Rex was willing to systematically erase his past contributions, he would eventually attempt to seize his future ones as well. He would, inevitably, try to cut him out entirely. And when that day came, Silas needed to be prepared. He understood then that integrity, while noble, needed a shield in the cutthroat world of corporate power. His legal background, albeit rudimentary from a few elective courses in business law during his engineering degree, had given him a foundational understanding of intellectual property law. He'd always been meticulous by nature, keeping detailed records of every sketch, every line of code, every design iteration, simply out of a habit of thoroughness. Now, this meticulousness would become his secret weapon, transformed from a personal quirk into a strategic advantage. Silas began to work in the shadows, quietly and methodically. His core innovation work at Nexus continued, of course, lest he arouse suspicion, but now, every new idea, every significant design, every critical algorithm, was documented with an almost obsessive precision, each step timestamped, each concept notarized if possible, each digital file redundantly backed up across secure, personal servers. He established a series of offshore legal entities, shell corporations in jurisdictions with robust intellectual property protections, entirely separate from Nexus innovations, hidden behind layers of corporate veils. These entities were structured in such a way that they held the rights to any new intellectual property he developed outside of his direct employment scope at Nexus, or that could be proven to have originated from his personal research and development activities, distinct from company-mandated projects. It was a complex legal dance, requiring meticulous record-keeping, careful timing of new product concepts, and the judicious use of personal resources carefully accumulated over 2 decades. He consulted with a brilliant, albeit discreet, intellectual property lawyer named Eleanor Vance, no relation, though her ethical compass was as strong as his own. She was a formidable woman, sharp as a tack, with a quiet intensity that matched Silas's own. Eleanor specialized in protecting the rights of individual inventors within corporate structures, having seen too many brilliant minds exploited by corporations. She became Silas's confidant, his legal architect. She helped him navigate the labyrinthine world of patents, copyrights, and trade secrets, advising him on how to legally establish ownership of his new creations before they were integrated into Nexus's product lines. Together, they created a legal firewall, a sophisticated structure that ensured that the truly groundbreaking, core innovations, the ones that would define Nexus's future and which Rex was so blithely unaware of, were legally tethered to Silas's personal holding companies, not to Nexus itself. This wasn't about stealing from Nexus. It was about protecting himself, about reclaiming what was rightfully his. His employment contract, like most in the tech industry, stipulated that anything he developed on company time or using company resources belonged to Nexus. His strategy was to ensure that the most valuable of his intellectual capital was demonstrably developed outside those parameters, or meticulously documented as a pre-existing concept. For example, a concept for a new, revolutionary AI architecture might be sketched out on his personal tablet at home during a quiet Sunday evening, then developed further on his personal workstation over weekends, refining algorithms and testing hypotheses, before being introduced as a new idea at Nexus. The crucial initial steps, the very genesis of the idea, were always documented as originating outside the company's purview, solidifying his independent claim. He built prototypes in a hidden workshop in his basement, a sanctuary filled with the familiar sense of metal and circuit boards, the hum of servers, and the quiet satisfaction of pure creation. He meticulously recorded every step, every modification, every breakthrough. These were not Nexus projects, these were Silas Vance projects, developed on his own dime, on his own time. When a concept matured sufficiently, when its patentability was undeniable and its legal ownership ironclad under his offshore entities, he would then, and only then, introduce it to Nexus, carefully ensuring that the core, patentable elements had already been legally secured under his personal entities. Rex, blinded by his ambition and his superficial understanding of the technology, never questioned the origins, only the potential profit. He never asked to see the deeper, underlying schematics, the foundational algorithms. He simply assumed they were Nexus property, a natural extension of the company's R&D. Rex was too busy chasing deals and press releases, too focused on the grand narrative of his own genius, to delve into the intricate legal minutiae of intellectual property. This secret weapon wasn't a single document or a hidden fund. It was a meticulously constructed legal and intellectual fortress. It comprised 1. A portfolio of patents and provisional patents filed under his personal holding companies, covering foundational technologies that Nexus would eventually incorporate or rely upon, particularly those in advanced AI and quantum computing. 2. Extensive, time-stamped documentation of his independent R&D efforts, including physical lab notebooks filled with detailed sketches and equations, digital logs securely encrypted and notarized, and witness attestations from trusted, discreet consultants Eleanor had vouched for, who were unaware of the full scope but could verify specific independent development milestones. 3. Strategic separation of intellectual property, ensuring that while Nexus implemented versions of his innovations, the core, fundamental breakthroughs that underpinned them were legally distinct and owned by his offshore entities. It was like selling a license to drive a car, while secretly owning the patent on the internal combustion engine itself. 4. A network of key individuals, not just Eleanor, but also a few trusted engineers and scientists within Nexus who, unbeknownst to Rex, recognized Silas's true contributions and were quietly loyal to him. They were not part of the legal scheme, but their eventual testimony about the origins of certain innovations would prove invaluable, corroborating Silas's claims from within Nexus itself. They were the silent witnesses to Rex's intellectual theft. Silas continued to play his role at Nexus, contributing, innovating, and enduring Rex's ever-increasing arrogance, his increasingly brazen claims of sole authorship. He watched Rex take credit, manipulate, and gradually alienate even loyal employees. He saw the rot setting in, the ethical compromises becoming more frequent, the focus shifting entirely from innovation to pure, unadulterated profit, often at the expense of product quality or employee well-being. He knew the end was coming, that Rex's hubris would inevitably lead him to attempt a final, complete purge. And when it did, Silas would be ready. The calm he displayed during his firing was not resignation, it was the quiet confidence of a man who held the master key to the very kingdom he was being exiled from. He felt the cold steel of certainty in his resolve. The days and weeks following Silas's unceremonious dismissal unfolded with a chilling predictability. Rex, confident in his absolute victory, wasted no time in consolidating his power. He purged Silas's remaining allies from the company, replacing them with sycophants and yes-men who would never question his directives, their faces eager to curry favor. He initiated a highly publicized restructuring, framing Silas's departure as a necessary step towards a more streamlined and dynamic Nexus. The narrative he spun painted Silas as an outdated relic, a drag on progress, someone holding the company back from its true potential. Rex even went as far as subtly implying Silas lacked the vision to take Nexus to the next level, a deliciously ironic accusation given that Silas's innovations were Nexus's next level. Silas, meanwhile, remained silent. He signed the severance papers without a word, his lawyer Eleanor reviewing them with a hawk's eye, making sure nothing in the boilerplate language could inadvertently undermine Silas's meticulously constructed legal fortress. Rex interpreted Silas's silence as defeat, his quietness as weakness, a sign of a man broken by the corporate machine. He saw a ghost haunting the halls of the company he helped build, now banished to the corporate wilderness. This perception was crucial to Silas's plan. It allowed Rex to drop his guard, to revel in his false sense of security, to become utterly complacent. Silas's real work began the moment he walked out of Nexus's glass doors for the last time. While Rex was busy orchestrating his public relations victory lap, holding lavish parties and appearing on every financial news channel, Silas was quietly activating the various components of his long-term strategy. The immediate priority was to fully launch his new venture, Vanguard Innovations. The name was chosen deliberately, a nod to leading the way, to forging new paths, a stark contrast to Rex's stagnant, self-serving empire that was now merely riding on past glory. Vanguard Innovations was not a sudden impulse. It had been meticulously planned for years, a ghost company in waiting, fully registered and legally compliant, but dormant, its infrastructure built, its initial funding secured from discreet, ethically aligned investors who believed in Silas's vision. Now, it sprang to life. The first step was to discreetly hire a small, elite team of engineers and developers. These weren't just random hires, they were individuals Silas had personally vetted over years, talented, ethical, and, crucially, disillusioned by Rex's increasingly toxic leadership at Nexus. Some were former Nexus employees who had left due to Rex's management, others were top-tier talents Silas had identified in the industry through his extensive network. He offered them not just competitive salaries, but a stake in a genuine innovation-driven culture, a promise of meaningful work, a place where their ideas would be valued and their contributions recognized, a stark contrast to the stifling environment Rex had created. The sense of purpose was palpable among the new recruits, a shared belief in building something truly transformative. Eleanor, Silas's lawyer, became an even more central figure. She began the quiet, systematic process of asserting ownership over the intellectual property Silas had safeguarded. This involved filing new patents, issuing cease and desist letters to specific companies that might be looking to license certain technologies from Nexus, and preparing for the inevitable legal battles. They initiated the process with surgical precision, targeting the most critical, foundational patents that formed the bedrock of Nexus's upcoming product roadmap. These were the innovations Rex was banking on for Nexus's next wave of growth, technologies he believed were firmly under his control, blissfully unaware of the legal quagmire he was about to step into. One of the key innovations was a revolutionary quantum computing interface. Silas had developed the core theoretical framework and initial algorithms for this outside of Nexus, meticulously documenting every step, every late-night breakthrough in his basement lab. Nexus had then licensed his prototype for further development, unaware that the underlying intellectual property was secured elsewhere. This quantum interface was the linchpin of Nexus's highly anticipated Project Chimera, a next-generation AI platform Rex had been hyping relentlessly to investors, promising unparalleled processing power and unprecedented leaps in machine learning. Silas also began quietly reaching out to Nexus's key suppliers and manufacturing partners. Not with accusations or threats, which would have been premature and potentially legally risky, but with simple, strategic inquiries. We understand your manufacturing components for Nexus's Project Chimera. We wanted to make you aware of a potential patent dispute regarding the core quantum interface technology. These were polite, factual communications, couched in cautious, legalistic language, designed to sow seeds of doubt and caution, not open conflict. Manufacturers, risk-averse by nature and with massive investments in their production lines, would immediately understand the implications of potential intellectual property infringement. Their production lines could be halted, their contracts jeopardized, their very businesses brought to a standstill by injunctions. This created a subtle pressure point, forcing them to reconsider their commitments to Nexus without Silas directly violating any non-compete clauses on his part. Rex, meanwhile, was basking in the limelight, oblivious to the quiet storm gathering. He was holding lavish press conferences, announcing bold new initiatives, and securing massive investment rounds based almost entirely on the promise of Project Chimera and other technologies that, unbeknownst to him, were about to become legal battlegrounds. He saw Silas's silence as a sign of weakness, his absence as an opportunity to rewrite history, to solidify his own narrative as the sole genius. He frequently told the media that Nexus was now unburdened by outdated ideas and free to innovate without compromise, a thinly veiled jab at Silas. His arrogance swelled, blinding him to the subtle shifts occurring around him, the quiet withdrawal of confidence from those who truly understood the tech landscape. He dismissed any rumors of Silas's new venture as the desperate flailings of a bitter ex-partner, a fly he could easily swat away, beneath his notice. He pushed the launch date for Project Chimera forward, eager to capitalize on the buzz, to solidify the perception of Nexus's continued dominance. This was precisely what Silas wanted. The sooner Rex committed Nexus publicly, the greater the fall would be, the more spectacular the public unraveling. Silas's plan was not just to reclaim his intellectual property, it was to expose Rex's fraud and arrogance to the entire industry, to dismantle the edifice of lies he had so carefully constructed. The stage was being set, not for Silas's quiet resurgence, but for Rex's spectacular collapse. Every quiet legal filing, every discreet communication, every strategic hire at Vanguard Innovations, was a carefully placed domino, waiting for the final push. The curiosity gap widened for the industry, wondering why Silas Vance, the true technical genius behind Nexus, had vanished so completely, while Rex Thorne's pronouncements grew ever more grandiose. They would soon learn why. The day arrived. The Global Tech Summit, the most prestigious event in the industry calendar. This was Rex Thorne's chosen stage for the grand unveiling of Project Chimera, Nexus Innovation's supposed magnum opus. The main hall, a cavernous space usually buzzing with subdued networking, was packed to capacity. Journalists jostled for prime positions, their cameras poised, investors leaned forward expectantly, their faces alight with speculative greed, and industry rivals watched with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. A colossal holographic display shimmered at the front, ready to project Rex's vision, its powerful projectors casting an ethereal glow. Rex, resplendent in a custom-tailored suit that shimmered under the stage lights, strode onto the stage to a thunderous applause. His smile was dazzling, his confidence radiating across the room, a practiced charm that had swayed so many. He launched into a meticulously rehearsed speech, his voice smooth and commanding, painting a vivid picture of a future powered by Nexus's groundbreaking AI. He spoke of innovation, of ethical technology, of pushing the boundaries of human potential, all the lofty ideals he had long discarded but still wielded as rhetorical weapons to captivate his audience. He credited himself, and only himself, for the relentless vision that had brought Project Chimera to fruition. Silas's name, predictably, remained unmentioned, erased from this triumphant narrative. Ladies and gentlemen, Rex's voice boomed, amplified by the state-of-the-art sound system, echoing through the vast hall. Today, Nexus Innovations unveils Project Chimera. This is not merely an AI, it is a sentient leap forward, powered by a revolutionary quantum computing interface that will redefine how we interact with technology, how we process information, and how we understand the very fabric of reality. As the holographic display sprang to life, showcasing stunning visualizations of Chimera's capabilities, complex algorithms swirling in vibrant colors, a subtle murmur rippled through the audience. This was, undeniably, impressive, a visual feast promising untold power. Rex paused for dramatic effect, letting the awe settle, then raised his hands for silence. And now, he declared, his voice imbued with a crescendo of triumph, a final flourish of his theatrical performance, we will demonstrate Project Chimera's unparalleled intelligence live. Just as he motioned for the demonstration to begin, a sudden, jarring change occurred on the colossal holographic screen. The vibrant Nexus Innovations logo, which had been proudly displayed, flickered. For a split second, it was replaced by a stark, minimalist logo, Vanguard Innovations. A collective gasp went through the audience, a wave of confusion washing over the room. Rex froze, his triumphant smile faltering, replaced by a look of bewildered confusion, his eyes wide with a question mark. He glanced back at the control booth, his jaw tightening, his perfect facade beginning to crack. Then, Silas's voice, calm and clear, resonated through the speakers, cutting through the stunned silence like a surgical blade. It was not a pre-recorded message, it was live. Thank you, Rex, for that enthusiastic introduction. You've certainly built the anticipation. A ripple of shock swept through the hall. Heads swiveled. Eyes frantically searched for the source of the voice, a collective dawning realization on many faces. Rex, his face now a mask of pure, unadulterated horror, spun around, scanning the stage, his eyes darting wildly. He saw no one, his mind struggling to comprehend. For the past 20 years, Silas's voice continued, steady and deliberate, devoid of emotion, like a factual recitation. Silas Vance has quietly engineered the core technologies that define Nexus Innovations. From our initial breakthroughs in neural networks to the very quantum computing interface you're about to unveil, his work has been the foundational bedrock of everything Nexus has achieved. The calm delivery only amplified the devastating impact of the words. A spotlight, seemingly from nowhere, snapped on, illuminating a discreet side entrance. Silas stepped out, dressed not in a flashy suit, but in a simple, well-tailored dark outfit that bespoke quiet authority and purpose. Beside him stood Eleanor, holding a tablet with a quiet, knowing smirk, her eyes fixed on Rex with an almost surgical interest. The collective gasp in the room was palpable, a tidal wave of realization washing over the assembly. Rex stared at Silas, his jaw slack, his face draining of all color, his eyes wide with disbelief. He looked like he'd seen a ghost, his personal specter of forgotten integrity. His carefully constructed facade shattered into a million pieces, revealing the hollow man beneath. You see, Rex, Silas continued, his voice echoing slightly in the cavernous hall, each word a hammer blow. For years, you took Silas's quiet dedication for weakness. You mistook his preference for engineering over grandstanding as an invitation to erase his contributions. You believed that by terminating his employment, you would also terminate his ownership of the ideas that make Nexus truly innovative. Silas gestured to the holographic screen, where the Vanguard Innovations logo now proudly displayed a series of complex patent numbers and legal filings, each one a nail in Rex's coffin. What you failed to realize, Rex, is that while Silas poured his heart into Nexus, he also meticulously secured the foundational intellectual property, the very patents that underpin technologies like this revolutionary quantum computing interface, under a separate legal structure. These innovations were developed on Silas's own time, with his own resources, meticulously documented and legally protected before they were ever introduced to Nexus. Eleanor, with a fluid, confident motion, swiped her tablet. The holographic screen changed again, now displaying a detailed legal document, a cease and desist order, its bold lettering projected for all to see, its implications immediately understood by every legal mind in the room. As of this morning, Silas's voice remained calm, almost conversational, the very lack of drama intensifying the shock. Vanguard Innovations has issued cease and desist orders to Nexus Innovations, its manufacturing partners, and any entity attempting to license the core quantum interface technology without our explicit permission. You see the patent numbers clearly displayed. These patents are not Nexus's. They are Silas's. The room erupted. A cacophony of shouts, gasps, and frantic whispers filled the air. Journalists scrambled for their phones, typing furiously, their fingers flying across keyboards, sensing the scoop of a lifetime. Investors exchanged horrified glances, their faces paling as they watched their investments turn to dust. Rex, meanwhile, was speechless. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound emerged, as if his vocal cords had been severed by the sheer force of the revelation. His eyes darted frantically between Silas and the projected legal documents, a desperate animal trapped in a corner, his carefully cultivated image of the visionary leader crumbling before the industry's eyes, dissolving into ridicule and shame. Project Chimera, Rex, Silas stated, letting the weight of his words sink in, a final, devastating pronouncement, is built entirely upon our patented quantum interface. Without it, your sentient leap forward is nothing more than a very expensive, very sophisticated paperweight. And every single component of it currently in production infringes upon our intellectual property. Every dollar you've raised, every partnership you've forged, every boast you've made, is now built on a foundation of intellectual theft. Silas took a deliberate step forward, fixing his gaze on Rex, his expression unwavering. You thought you could fire Silas and claim his legacy. You thought you could erase him. But he is not erased, Rex. He is here. And the true innovation, the true vision, is now exactly where it always belonged, with Vanguard Innovations. The silence that followed was deafening, punctuated only by the click of camera shutters and the frantic scribbling of reporters. Rex Thorne, the charismatic CEO, the undisputed king of Nexus, stood frozen on stage, stripped bare of his power, his face a mask of utter devastation, his empire collapsing around him in real time. The ultimate comeback plan was not just a plan, it was a perfectly executed masterpiece, a symphony of long-awaited justice. The immediate aftermath of the Global Tech Summit was nothing short of cataclysmic for Rex Thorne and Nexus Innovations. The industry, witnessing the public unraveling of a corporate empire, reacted with swift and brutal efficiency. The once unquestioning admiration for Rex transformed into a collective scorn, his name becoming a byword for hubris and corporate malfeasance. Financial analysts immediately downgraded Nexus's stock, issuing dire warnings. The news spread like wildfire. Within hours, major financial news outlets had banner headlines: Nexus Innovations Project Chimera built on stolen IP, and Silas Vance, silent co-founder, unleashes legal barrage against Rex Thorne. The video of Silas's calm, controlled revelation, juxtaposed with Rex's stunned, mortified silence and his pathetic attempts to regain composure, went viral, replayed countless times across social media. It was a masterclass in corporate comeuppance, a living embodiment of justice served cold, meticulously planned and perfectly executed. Investors, rattled by the public disclosure of such fundamental intellectual property infringement, began a mass exodus. Nexus's stock, which had been steadily climbing on the promise of Project Chimera, plummeted, shedding billions in market value in mere hours. Emergency board meetings were called, frantic and desperate, but the damage was already irreparable. The legal implications alone were staggering. Every single component of Project Chimera in production was now an intellectual property liability, each unit a potential target for massive lawsuits. Manufacturing partners immediately halted production, fearing massive lawsuits and reputational damage. Licensing deals for Nexus's supposed next-gen technologies evaporated overnight, as companies realized the underlying technology was tainted. The board, once firmly under Rex's thumb, turned on him with the ferocity of cornered animals fighting for survival. Their own reputations and financial futures were at stake, tied directly to the rapidly sinking ship that was Nexus. Accusations of gross negligence, fraudulent misrepresentation, and outright intellectual property theft were hurled his way, their voices laced with fury and fear. Rex, stripped of his bravado, was a pathetic figure. His usual smooth answers dissolved into stuttering incoherence, his once silver tongue now a leaden weight. He tried to deny, to deflect, to blame Silas for a malicious attack, a personal vendetta, but the meticulously presented evidence, Silas's documented R&D, the pre-existing patents, the clear legal structure of Vanguard Innovations, and Eleanor's calm, irrefutable legal arguments, left no room for doubt. Within 48 hours, Rex Thorne was forcibly removed as CEO of Nexus Innovations. The board, desperate to salvage any shred of reputation, issued a terse public statement, disavowing his actions and announcing a full internal investigation, a mere formality given the undeniable evidence. The once mighty Nexus, a beacon of innovation under Silas's silent guidance, was now a sinking ship, floundering in a sea of lawsuits, plunging stock prices, and widespread public distrust, its future uncertain. The shockwaves extended beyond the boardroom. Employees within Nexus, many of whom had silently resented Rex's tyrannical rule and Silas's sidelining, felt a perverse sense of vindication. Some, particularly the more ethical and talented engineers who valued genuine innovation over corporate politics, began quietly reaching out to Silas, expressing their desire to join Vanguard Innovations, drawn by the promise of a truly innovation-driven culture where their work would be respected. They had long known Rex's true character, but fear of his power and their own job security had kept them silent. Now, the fear had shifted. It was no longer about fearing Rex, it was about fearing association with his disgraced, collapsing empire. Eleanor, Silas's lawyer, worked tirelessly. Lawsuits were filed not just against Nexus, but against Rex personally for various breaches of fiduciary duty, fraudulent misrepresentation, and gross mismanagement that had led to the company's downfall. The legal labyrinth Rex had thought he could navigate by simply firing Silas now became his personal hell, a relentless onslaught of legal demands and financial penalties. The very intellectual property he believed he had seized was now the weapon that would dismantle his entire career and personal fortune. Silas's former colleagues, the ones who had remained silent witnesses to Rex's usurpation of his credit, now approached him with mixtures of awe and regret. Some offered sincere apologies for their inaction, their voices tinged with shame, others simply offered admiration for his foresight and unwavering resolve. They saw not a vindictive ex-partner, but a strategist who had patiently endured, meticulously planned, and ultimately delivered justice. Their shock was profound, their regret genuine. They had been too afraid, too comfortable in their positions, to challenge Rex. Now, they saw the cost of their inaction reflected in Nexus's rapid demise and their own uncertain futures. Their expressions of guilt were not what Silas sought, but they were a clear indication that the moral compass, though suppressed, still existed within the industry. Rex, stripped of his power, his wealth rapidly eroding under legal fees and plummeting investments, became a pariah. His charisma, once his greatest asset, now only highlighted the hollowness of his character, his carefully constructed persona nothing more than a facade. The industry, once enamored, now remembered every instance of his arrogance, every whispered rumor of his ruthlessness, every time he had stepped over others to climb higher. His downfall was not just financial, it was absolute social and professional ostracization. He had chased success at any cost, riding on the backs of others' genius, and now he was paying the ultimate price. Several years have passed since that watershed moment at the Global Tech Summit. The dust has settled, the legal battles have, for the most part, concluded, and the landscape of the tech industry has been subtly reshaped, a new chapter beginning. Nexus Innovations, once a formidable player, was eventually acquired for pennies on the dollar by a rival firm, its intellectual property portfolio significantly diminished, its reputation irrevocably tarnished. Its legacy became a cautionary tale of corporate greed. Rex Thorn's name became synonymous with corporate malpractice and reckless ambition. He lost everything: his fortune, his standing, his very identity. He faded into obscurity, facing a mountain of personal debt and the permanent stain of his actions. His attempts to re-enter the business world were met with cold, polite refusals. No one wanted to associate with a man whose name was synonymous with betrayal. The industry, though often ruthless, has a long memory for those who betray trust and disregard ethics. Silas's own path, however, diverged sharply. Vanguard Innovations blossomed, growing steadily and organically, rooted in integrity. With the core patents now firmly under their control, and a reputation built on integrity and genuine innovation, they quickly attracted top talent and significant investment from those who valued ethical and groundbreaking work. Their first flagship product, a refined version of the quantum computing interface that had once been the sole domain of Project Chimera, revolutionized data processing and AI development, opening new frontiers in the field. Vanguard didn't just build technology, they built a culture. A culture where ideas were valued above ego, collaboration above competition, and ethical principles above short-term gains, a stark contrast to the cutthroat world Silas had left behind. Silas now serves as the CEO of Vanguard Innovations, a role he never actively sought but has embraced with quiet determination. The quiet, behind-the-scenes engineer found himself at the helm of a thriving enterprise, guided by the very principles Rex had scoffed at. His focus remains on creation, on solving complex problems, on fostering a true spirit of innovation, but now, it is coupled with the satisfaction of knowing that every success is built on a foundation of honesty and earned merit. The recognition he receives now is authentic, not appropriated, a deep and abiding satisfaction that far surpasses any fleeting public acclaim. His life is peaceful, fulfilling. He spends his days doing what he loves, innovating, mentoring a brilliant team of dedicated engineers, and ensuring that Vanguard's technology is used responsibly and ethically. The bitterness, if it ever truly existed, has long since dissipated, replaced by a quiet contentment, a profound sense of purpose. The vindication was sweet, undoubtedly, a necessary act of justice, but the true victory lies in the creation of something better, something truly impactful and built on a foundation of integrity. The story of Silas Vance and Rex Thorn became an industry legend, a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms and a source of inspiration in startup garages. It teaches us a profound lesson. True power is not found in coercion, manipulation, or the appropriation of another's genius. It lies in substance, in genuine contribution, and in the quiet, unyielding strength of integrity. While ambition can drive progress, unchecked arrogance and a disregard for ethics will ultimately lead to ruin. The person who builds their empire on sand, believing they can simply erase the foundations laid by others, will inevitably watch it crumble. But the one who meticulously cultivates their own garden, who protects their intellectual seeds with patience and foresight, will ultimately reap a harvest far richer and more enduring than any stolen bounty. Never underestimate the quiet strength of the principled individual. Sometimes, the most devastating comeback is not born of fury, but of profound, calculated wisdom. If Silas Vance's story resonated with you, and you appreciate tales of justice served and the triumph of integrity, then you're in the right place. Our channel is dedicated to sharing more powerful narratives just like this one, stories of resilience, strategy, and life-changing comebacks. Don't miss out on our next deep dive into the human experience. Make sure to hit that subscribe button right now, and ring the notification bell so you're always updated when we release a new video. And now, we want to hear from you. Have you ever encountered such blatant ingratitude or treachery in your own life, whether in business, friendships, or family? What did you do? Or, if you were in Silas's shoes, what would your ultimate comeback plan have been? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your insights and stories are invaluable. We read every single one.